Because of Dr. Lesser, having me inspired enough to quickly sit down and write Orthomolecular Treatment of Criminal Offenders, the administration, the public school administration in New York City read that work, called me up and said we'd want to change the diet in New York because we have a 36th percentile in national standardized academic test scores, and we need to do better. There were 17 students per teacher in that school system. They had the most educated teachers in the United States in terms of master's and doctorate degrees teaching children in school. And they had one of the worst school programs in terms of breakfast and lunch. And it was in 1978 a lead article in the cover of the New York Times that something had to be done about the school program. So we made changes there. And this is how Stephen Schoenthaler and I got to meet for the first time. I was looking for someone to work on the statistics on the school program, and he got involved in that program at my request. And this was at a time where Stephen did not believe that nutrition had an impact on criminal behavior, but from the experience he saw and what was going on in New York City, he became inspired enough in 1982 to start studies in Virginia, and later on, of course, as many of you know, he did studies in Texas, Alabama, and California, all of which supported findings that nutrition did affect antisocial behavior in a very positive way. I wrote a book in Japanese called Nutrition and Criminal Behavior, which was published by Brain Shupan, and this was because they were noticing in school systems throughout Japan, that is, they started to adopt our Western diet, the various types of fast food restaurants, convenience food, and moving away from their traditional foods, they would start seeing more and more antisocial behavior and discipline problems and conduct disorder and distractibility among students in the classroom. So Professor Osawa and I began to collaborate in 1984-85 to write this work, which has never been translated into English, by the way. And it was a very difficult work for me because it's in Japanese to work on because we had to talk about the Japanese diet, which I was not so familiar with. And he was a great inspiration in helping me prepare this book. And it got excellent reviews in the newspapers in Japan, by the way. And in 1994, I was invited to Tokyo to give a lecture on this subject. And the professors turned out from all over Japan to meet me and talk about this work and its importance. Simon Schuster, we published a lot of information about the New York City public school system study in 1991. This has been reprinted now in just a few months ago as a book called Feed My Brain, and it talks about how each one of these nutrients affects brain function. So it's a wonderful, useful book from that standpoint. And the question continues, does junk food promote crime? And in 1982, there was the first National Conference on Nutrition Behavior at the University of Texas at Austin. 990 academics showed up, and the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And this was the first time that a national conference was held to look at this major question. I keynoted that conference, and this kind of leads me into introducing or getting ready to have Stephen Carter introduce our next speaker, because this is Oxford, and I was very honored 3 times to be invited to lecture at Oxford, 1983, 1984, and actually live in Oxford in 1985 with my family and teach at the John Radcliffe Hospital Department of Pediatrics with Dr. Joseph Edgar, and this is where for the first time I met Bernard Gesch. And I have to say that I was so impressed that Dr. Gesch kept his word, and if I recall correct, and Dr. Gesch can correct me, I think this is High Street in Oxford, a very busy place where we do our shopping when we were there, because he said that someday, Alex, I will take a look at this and I will do an actual study, and he kept his word. He actually kept his word, and I'm incredibly indebted to him for keeping his word and caring enough about the subject to get the funding, which I know was not easy, to establish the association, which I know took a lot of work, to get the government interested in the subject enough that a study can be conducted. And I'm really looking very forward to and eager to his lecture this morning. And if you missed any of what I said this morning, you fell asleep from jet lag or something like that, Barbara Griggs wrote a whole chapter which covers everything I've just discussed with you and the food factor. And the last thing I want to point out to you, this is the New York Times, April 30th, 2004. So here we are. Remember, I started in 1968. Now, this is sad, and this is why I'm frustrated. And that's the title of my presentation, because it states here that many counties in the United States today have over 30% of their population incarcerated. Just think of that. What a waste of life. What an expense. And if you don't think I'm frustrated, you weren't here at this lecture. Thank you very much.
That was a terrific presentation, Alex.